I'm Krista Staten, and I'm from Georgia, in case you didn't recognize it. But I'm from South Georgia. I work with Georgia Baptist Mission Board, and we are going to talk about safety and security in this class. Now, I wish this was a class where I could give you a step-by-step, do this, do this, do this, and you're going to be safe and secure. But unfortunately, there's a lot of variables that we have to take into account when we look at safety and security, as far as what's your building like, how many people, do you have one main door, or do you have a gazillion doors, do you have multiple buildings, do you have one building? So there's just a lot of things that come into play. So we're going to talk through some different points that you need to make sure that you've already thought about, okay? So we're just going to go through that. This will be very much an open dialogue too, because there's so many of you that have had situations or different building scenarios that you've already thought through. And so I think this could be a class where we very much can learn from each other and talking about the different scenarios, okay? So feel free to jump in. But the first thing I want us to talk about, and we're going to be honest, this isn't really the fun stuff to talk about. But it's all necessary, because if we're going to create that foundation for people to feel safe and secure, if a parent does not feel safe, are they going to bring their kid to Vacation Bible School? No. They're not even going to bring them. So this is such an important part of the puzzle to getting people to even... Do y'all see this moving?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're hitting with your shoulder.
I don't think so. I'm going to move forward a little bit. But to get people to even be willing to bring their kids to our Bible school. So it's something that we definitely need to discuss and we need to work through and talk through. So first thing I want us to talk about is background checks. This is something that we always talk about when it comes to safety and security. And I know some of you are probably sitting there going, really? Can y'all just stop talking about that? Well, we can't, because there's so many churches still not doing background checks. And background checks is such an easy thing to do. Is it a little bit costly? It can be. Like sometimes it's $10, $12 a person to do a background check. But let me ask you a question. If you could pay $12 and keep a child from being abused, would you do it? Mm-hmm. So when you put it in that kind of perspective, that's not a whole lot to pay, is it? So going ahead and doing those background checks. Now, the other reason that I get on background checks is, well, we all know everybody. Everybody at my church knows everybody. We all know what they're... Y'all, I've been in ministry now for over 20 years. We just don't know what's going on behind closed doors. We don't know what's happening in the homes of the people in our church. I got to the point where I was like, I think I'm becoming a little callous to this, because like nothing's surprising me anymore. And that's a shame to say, because even some of our most most active families in our church, you would start finding out things and you're like, really? So do these background checks. Why is it important? If you think you know everybody, why is it important? Think several years ago. You remember the Boys and Girls Clubs? Do you remember they were showing up in the news quite a bit because they had so many pedophiles and abusers that were working with them? What they started doing background checks. Well, then all those people started moving to our recreation departments and our sports leagues and doing things. So guess what happened at the sports leagues? They started doing background checks. And so guess where they all started migrating after that? Churches. Because we all know everybody. And we all think that we have in mind what a pedophile would look like. Think of the craziest person you can imagine, and we think, oh yeah, I bet they're probably a pedophile. But when in reality, if you Google search pictures of pedophiles, they look like you and me. You cannot look at a person and tell what's going on with them. So we want to make sure that we're going ahead and covering this, because a lot of times with safety and security, it's putting up the obstacles. And will a background check find everybody? It's not, because there's a lot of people that have not been prosecuted yet. They hadn't even been caught in it, so it doesn't catch them. But it's an obstacle. And so if they come to your church and find out that you've got to go through this step, and you've got to have an interview with a person, and you've got to go through a background check, and you've got to go to training, and you've got to do all this, a lot of them will go, you know what, I can go find easier targets somewhere else, and they'll move on. So you're just creating obstacles. So do the background checks. Again, when you start looking at how much it costs, would you pay $10 or $12 instead of letting a child get abused? So it's not that much to pay. Some of the sites that I like that I've had experience with is like Ministry Safe. They're housed here in Texas. That's a great company. They do a national search on sex offenders, not just the state of Texas or not just the state of Georgia or wherever you're from, but it's a national search. The other thing I like about them is they keep up with it. So you have a website on there, and you don't have to go, oh, this person wants to volunteer for Vacation Bible School. Let me go through my file and see if I've already got a background check. It's all digitally saved, and you can quickly see if they've had a background check, if they've had training, if they've had whatever. And that site also provides training for your people, so you don't all of a sudden have to become the expert in teaching your teachers or you even knowing how to handle things. It's all right there in that website. So that's one I really like. Some people go through their sheriff's departments or police departments, but from what I understand with that, a lot of times it's just your state, but you don't really want to just do your state. You want to do things that's checking out the whole country. So I encourage you to look for a reputable site like that. Like Ministry Safe, again, is the one that I have experience with and really, really like. Another obstacle that we can put in place is policies and procedures. So one easy thing, well, let me back up. None of this is really easy. It's all going to take some effort, but it's just making sure we got enough teachers in the spaces that we have. So making sure that there's always 2 teachers in every room. And a lot of people will even say those 2 teachers have to be unrelated. So it can't be like a husband and a wife or a mother and a daughter. Unrelated people. Why do we say unrelated people? Let's say a kid comes in and says that the lady touched them in a way that they shouldn't have touched. In a court of law, the husband can't really say, no, she didn't, because, it's her husband. And so it's not really a valid testimony, I guess you could say, to say that it didn't happen. A lot of people are putting cameras in their rooms, but they still have 2 people in the room, but they're putting cameras in their room to protect children, but also to protect adults, so that from accusations or having things done in hallways, wherever. So any steps like that, it depends on your church and what can you afford, what can you do, but we all can have 2 people in a room. So just make sure that you do that. Here's some ratios I'm just going to give you real quick. These are some that Lifeway recommends. If it's a baby room, you want to always have 2, but the general rule is a 1 to 3. So you can have 1 adult to 3 babies with a minimum of how many adults? 2. So make sure that's 1 to 3. 3s to pre-K, 1 to 4. So 1 teacher to 4 children with a minimum of 2. Kindergarten, it's 1 to 5. Of course, with a minimum of 2 teachers. Grades 1 through 6, it's a 1 teacher with 2 assistants. You ready for this? With a maximum of 25. So it's quite a jump there, but the reasons for that is because when you get to those older age, they're more independent. They can do things on their own. They can sit in chairs. They can do things more independently than a baby or a preschooler. So you just want to make sure in creating that safe environment, secure environment, that we're taking care of all those little details as well. Because a lot of times we don't think of that as safety and security. All right, here's another thing that we can put in place with our policies and procedures is restroom guidelines. Have any of y'all put restroom guidelines in place yet? What do y'all do? What do you do?
We have somebody, an adult, sitting posted outside the restroom,
Mm-hmm.
and then we have just the kids go in, or like no adults in the bathroom with the children, if they're first
Good. And I saw a hand over here.
We do, for our pre-K, like our free to pre-K, they don't have bathrooms in their rooms, so they go, and only the female teacher can take them. The door is open, they send in, I think we have 2 stalls in there, so they send in 2, and they come out, and they only go in there if there's like an emergency or something, but they try to get another adult to come down, like maybe haul down the hallway or call, hey, I need some help.
Yeah. A lot of churches, they might even do like a kid bathroom and an adult bathroom. So if a teacher needs to go use the bathroom, they're never having to go in there. You might be sitting there going, we only got 1 bathroom in our whole church, so what do we do? You can.
We put somebody outside the door.
Yeah.
If there's kids in there, sorry, adult, you gotta wait.
Yeah, putting that person outside the door, because you also want to listen for things happening peer to peer. You want to make sure that there's nothing going on in the bathroom that should not be going on. So I would always kind of kick the door open and or at least keep 1 foot in so that your ear can be right there listening to what's going on in the bathroom. So you want to make sure that you're well aware. Since it's Vacation Bible School, I had one lady, she's like, we do our Vacation Bible School in a public park. So they would always send an adult into the bathroom first to check out the bathroom, make sure there's nobody in the bathroom before, and then they'd come out, stand at the door, and then let kids go in. And like if there's 2 stalls, let 2 kids go in. When 1 kid comes out, the next kid can go in. Just don't send them all down into the bathroom. Another thing I would not do is just send kids to the bathroom by themselves. So that's kind of a thing we get into is we're so busy, we're so stretched thin with volunteers, we're in the middle of teaching something, a kid needs to go to the bathroom, and you're like, oh, okay, 3rd door on the right, and you just send them out on their little way. I would not do that, just to keep the safety and security as high as it possibly can be. So always monitoring them. Okay, another thing with policies and procedures is behavioral expectations. This can come from a multiple angles here, but one thing we want to talk about is our teacher behavior expectations. I think we've got to remember, in the setting of church and Vacation Bible School, where we're sitting there talking about God sees me and cares about me and loves me, and we're going through all these things, we never want a teacher going, "Hey, Sarah, shut up!" We don't want them yelling at our kids. We want to carry that. We want teachers to behave in a very loving manner. And do I realize things can get a little stressful at Vacation Bible School? They absolutely can. But we need to stay calm, and we need to encourage the people that we're working with. Hey, and if you're working with a teacher who's getting just out of control and kind of losing it, just go. I know it puts you in an awkward situation, but you might just need to go up to them and say, hey, why don't you go out in the hall for a little bit and just take a deep breath? I got this. If y'all are just 2 people in the room, just say, hey, why don't you just go stand outside the door, keep looking in the window at me, and just take a deep breath. And I got it for a minute. But really talking to teachers about our behavior and our expectations of how we want them to act. No hitting, no yelling, no spanking, no any of those things, Just making sure that's understood up front. Another thing is child behavior. If we're going to keep the environment safe and secure, we got to think about our kids' behavior. I'm telling you, I've had some strange things happen at Vacation Bible School before. I had a kid come out last year, and he was losing it in the hallway. In the classroom, he was losing it. So one of the teachers stepped out into the hallway with him just to give him that time just to kind of calm down. He was yelling at the top of his lungs. He then began to bang his head against the wall. Security, get over here. We need some help, because it's something that we had to quickly get this under control, because if the parents were going to trust us for him to come back, honestly, there were times where we're like, do we need him to come back? No, I'm just kidding. But we wanted to be able to keep him safe, but I had a 2nd grader one time that started picking up chairs and throwing chairs across the room while other kids were in the classroom. So we've got to know how we're going to handle these behaviors. There was a whole class on that. I hope y'all got to go to that, on how you handle behavior in your classrooms. But we've got to be ready to act and to get control of the situation. When that happened in my Sunday school room several years ago, I had a lady that worked in the public school system in special needs, so she knew exactly what to do. And she came and she had that kid like restrained and on the floor before I knew what was going on. I was like, whoa, can we do that at church? I mean, but you've got to be ready to handle that and to remove those kids from that setting in order to keep all kids safe and secure. Because if we don't get control of situations like that, what's going to happen with all the other kids in the room? They're not coming back. It's going to scare them to death, so they're not going to come back. So just making sure we talk about behavior and ready to handle that, whether it be a teacher or a kid. The backpack idea. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about that. This is just kind of something for Vacation Bible School, especially because we don't know what kind of kids are going to be coming in. We hope a lot of kids are going to be coming in. But having one person designated to have a backpack on them with all kind of things in their backpack that'll help a kid self-regulate and get control of their behavior. This could be fidgets, any kind of fidget, anything that they can do with their hands, doing something like that. They have a pack of Sour Patch Kids, like the Sour Patch gummies. Why do I say Sour Patch gummies? There's something about sour candy when a kid is losing it that you can give them to chew on, because all kids like candy, right? They can put that sour candy in their mouth and it distracts them. It gets their mind off of their current situation or what currently triggered them onto, oh, my jaws are locking. You know, it helps distract them. So Sour Patch. They have a protein bar. They have a bottle of water. Try this. You cannot cry if you're drinking water. So giving them something to drink, it calms them down sometimes because they have to take a breath. They have to quit crying in order to drink a sip of water. So having a water bottle, just having anything like that that can help a kid just calm down. And that way, if you've got a kid that just needs maybe just getting away from all the stimulation of the room and getting them out can help, and that helps you to maintain order in your classroom. Okay? And then just creating safe spaces. Like this door that's on this room right here is just a solid wood door. If I had a room full of children, I would never shut that door. You want to keep your rooms very visible so that somebody decides to throw chairs, you certainly want the person walking down the hall to see what's going on so they can come in and help you, right? So just keeping that open and visibility for your classroom. Decorations, another thing we have to be careful with, because a lot of times we'll just cover up those windows that are in the doors and then there's no visibility. So I've had people get upset with me because they have this beautiful decoration on their door, and I'm like, y'all, I told you not to cover the windows. And then what happens, they have to get scissors and cut their beautiful decoration because, you know what, I don't care. We're going to see in your classroom. And so they'll have to cut those holes. So just making sure to keep your rooms visible. All right, let's switch gears now. That's all policy, procedure, all that kind of stuff. And let's talk about emergency preparedness. First aid, CPR. Anybody at your VBS know how to do first aid? Do you have a nurse on site? Do you know where the Band-Aids are? Just making sure things like, because we need some Band-Aids at Vacation Bible School, don't we? Sometimes just because it makes us feel better, and sometimes there's a real issue with a skint knee or something like that. So just making sure that you've got Band-Aids that are available to you and that you can get on. You might even need a pair of gloves, depending if it's like a for real need of a Band-Aid. You need a pair of gloves or maybe some Bactine spray or something like that to clean up a wound. If you have a nurse that could do any of that, that's a beautiful thing to have her. And then, kids throwing up, oh, nurse, I need some help, and they can just, call the parent or whatever. EpiPen training. Have you ever had training on an EpiPen and to be able to know how to use those? Things like that can be ordered. I had one state in here tell me that they could actually get EpiPens to have at their church in case there was an allergic. Because a lot of times you can have an anaphylactic shock from your first exposure of ever having something. So, a kid comes in and we don't even know they have an allergy, and then they eat our treat and all of a sudden they're an anaphylactic shock. And so just being able to pop an EpiPen in them or know where EpiPens are in other kids' bags, something to be able to handle a situation like that. Another situation we need to be aware of to keep kids safe and secure is choking. We all have to have a good snack at Vacation Bible School. I tell the story, my daughter, it was a Wednesday night supper at church, and she was still in a high chair, and she started choking at Wednesday night supper. And so, I had been through the training of the Heimlich maneuver and all that kind of stuff, so I was able to quickly grab her out and dislodge that. But during our snack time, a lot of times we see that as an opportunity to catch up with each other. But we really need to be mindful to watch our children and make sure nothing like that's happening, and that there's somebody that knows what to do to help dislodge anything that may be stuck or that they may be choking on. Fire and evacuation plans. How do you handle that at your church? Do people know where their nearest exits are? Do they have a list of their kids to even know if they got everybody? Or heaven forbid they start doing the number count and they only have 9 kids and they're supposed to have 10, but in this event of an emergency, you can't remember who are you missing, and they don't have a list of the kids. So just making sure that they have a list. Something we did at our church is we had a drawstring bag that we just hang by the door, and in the bag would have a rope where every kid could grab the rope real quick. We'd throw a flashlight in there, because if it's fire or tornado or anything like that where you've got to quickly get kids out of the room, you need them to grab hold, follow you, stay together, hold the rope, and guess what? The lights are probably going to be out. And you certainly don't want to be like, oh, where's my cell phone? I got to get my cell phone so I have a flashlight. So it's just all in the bag. That'd be a great place to throw the Band-Aids, everything, so that it's all just a quick grab and teachers can get in and get out. The other thing I want to mention that I hate we even have to talk about is active shooter. So an easy thing to do on a situation like this is keep the church doors locked. Just lock them. When you go to a school, can you get in? No. All the doors are locked except that front door, and every single shooter has either been in the building or they've gotten through from an unlocked door. So just making sure that our churches stay locked. Is it super inconvenient? You know what? It really is. It's really inconvenient when you have to lock the doors. And a lot of the people that give me the most trouble about it are my volunteers. And I told them, it's like, complain all you want. This door is going to be locked at this time and you will not be able to get in. You can bang on the door. You can knock on the door. We're not letting you in. It's okay if you get mad at me. I'm okay with that. You got to go to the front to come in. And then security's at the front door letting people in. And they know exactly who's in that building. It's creating an obstacle. So again, a lot of what you want to do is create obstacles. Okay, let's say in the event somebody gets in your building. Every person in law enforcement that I've talked to, and even some of the practices that they're doing in the schools, is you want to get your door shut. You want to get something in front of the door so that it can't be open, because a lot of times we don't have access to lock the door. Now, if it's a situation where you can lock the door, lock the door. You want to get the kids to where they're not visible. So let's say it's this room right here, and we've got to do something really quick. We would shut the door. If you notice, this door opens to the outside. There's still things that you could throw in front of this door to create a barrier, even if it's these chairs right here. You want to create obstacles. Just always think, we got to create obstacles. And so you want to help block this door as much as possible. But then in this room, you would want kids to be in these corners. You don't want them to be out here, because over there, they're visible. So you want to get them tucked to where they're not visible from the door. My thinking was, our church is just like this. It's sheetrock walls. And I thought, well, they could just shoot through the sheetrock and then they get every one of us. They said, you're thinking about this like a sane person. I said, what do you mean by that? And they said, well, you got to think like an insane person that's coming in to shoot people. They want to see their targets. And so if they're visible, that's who they're after. And they want an easy target because they know they have only a short amount of time. And so if they come to our door and they can't get in our door, they're going to go to the next door. They're just going to keep going down the hall. So create obstacles. There's things you can order, like little rubber stobs that can stay like right here, that you can throw down on the floor and kick under the door, just so it makes the door harder to open. and it has even a little holder that sticks. There's things you can get depending on your doors. Now, it's all situational, that you can put on the hinges. A lot of churches are keeping their doors locked, and then you put a magnetic strip right here over where their door closes so that the little thing doesn't go in there, and so your door never locks. But if you pull that magnetic strip and shut your door, then it's locked. So there's things like that you can do that's simple, but you got to think ahead and get those supplies in so that you can be ready in those situations. But again, keep doors locked. Keep those outside doors locked. Keep your inside doors locked if you can, or easy to lock in a situation. But create the obstacles. And this is something you want to make sure people know in your church what to do. Because when it's in the moment, you don't have time to say, oh, what do you think we should do? Somebody asked me, they were like, what if we're outside? What if it's rec time and we're outside? You want to yell at kids to run in a zigzag to a location, whatever location. I mean, I would never tell kids, okay, look, if somebody comes out here and starts shooting us, we're going to go hide over here. But you want to kind of know, hey, if something happened and I needed to get these kids gathered quickly, where could I tell them to go? Maybe it's back in the building, but you want to zigzag because it's harder to shoot a moving target. Whereas if you're running a straight line, that's a lot easier to hit. Okay, so a zigzag. All right. Don't like talking about stuff like that, but unfortunately it's things that we need to discuss, So let's switch gears here and talk about tornadoes. Do you know where to go we had a tornado warning during Vacation Bible School one year. That was crazy. But, do you know where to go in your church for a tornado? Do you have a list of kids? Do you have a flashlight? Do you know a game that you can play real quick in that, have this little, well, hopefully it's not this one because this one's looking a little sad. But having these balls available that you could grab in there and do a little volleyball game or do something with them because everybody's going to be a little tense. Everybody's going to be a little nervous. So just, being able to think through where do we go, how do we get there the quickest, and what are we going to do once we get there. Flashlights, because again, your electricity is going to probably go off. So having flashlights available and where you know where they are and can grab them and get to that location safely. Let's talk about health and hygiene. That's always fun too. Sanitation practices. There's things really easy that we can do in Vacation Bible School. Just simple things like making sure our tables are wiped down. It's things we don't really think about because we're busy, getting the next thing ready or getting the next snack out or getting the next activity or Bible story or whatever your position is at Vacation Bible School. You're just quickly trying to get all that stuff ready to go when we think, maybe we should wipe down the tables real quick before we do this next activity. But just wiping down those tables, having Lysol wipes to make sure we get all that done. Wash hands. Wash hands, wash hands, wash hands. So taking these kids to wash their hands before they have a snack or because you think about all the different things that we're touching and kids are going to put their hands all over their face and in all the things that they'll fit into. And so we just need to make sure that they're keeping their hands washed. And this is just another part of keeping our kids safe, and we don't really think about that as safety and security, but cleanliness and hygiene and all that is part of it. So just making sure, having sanitizer available, whatever you can do. Here's my pet peeve. So I threw it in here. This is just extra. Keeping the kids out of the kitchen. A lot of times our churches just open up their kitchen doors and you'll see kids all the times going into the ice machine. Now, how many times have you seen a kid wash their hands before they stuck their cup in? And a lot of times it's a used cup in that ice machine. And I tell y'all this because I worked at camp when I was in college. It was a resident camp. And 90% of the camp got sick with this horrible stomach something. And it all originated from the ice machine. It was awful. I mean, we had to turn the gym into an infirmary and just pull mattresses into the gym. We had kids that lined up on mattresses all in. So we don't want this to happen, because guess what? They're probably not coming back to your VBS ever. So just make sure that, things like the kitchen that the kids are staying out of. Okay? All right, illness protocols on that note. If it does happen in your ice machine, what you gonna do? So just illness protocols and the spread of illness, how to notify parents of outbreaks of lice or hand, foot, mouth. A lot of times we're like, oh, should we tell people? Yes, you should. Go ahead and send that note out. Parents are used to that from school, getting notes of lice, but the more people you can have checking for lice or hand, foot, mouth or any flu or stomach virus or anything to recognize those symptoms. And if a child comes to your VBS, send them home. If they're sick, send them home. Don't let them stay. You should have great registration information to be able to call a parent, to be able to call an emergency contact, remove them from the kids, get them out of there and get them home. Managing allergies is another thing that's very difficult, but it's something that to keep kids safe and secure. Anaphylactic shock is such a scary thing, but if a kid comes to us with allergies, we need to have a way to mark their name tag or have a armband on or something that would notify everybody that's there of an allergy, to make sure that maybe it's the kid that kind of loses it and the person with a backpack decides to give them a granola bar, only to find out that they're allergic to something that was in the granola bar because they had no way to know. So, you just want to make sure that everybody that's working with the kids is aware of the allergies and we can manage those. Posting menus is another easy thing, just so parents can see that. Emailing parents the menus. I have sent pictures of food labels to parents just so they could double check me on stuff. I saw your hand, I'm sorry.
In our registration, we ask the parents, like, hey, does your kid have allergies? And if they do, like, for example, my kid's allergic to peanuts and we have EpiPen and all that. So whenever I get there, they're like, hey, she's allergic to peanuts, right? Like, we double check every single child. Like, hey, make sure, we ask every parent when they get there, even if they filled out the registration with 0. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Just making sure that we're not just asking for the information, that we're actually doing something about it. Because again, this is just building that foundation of trust with our parents so that they'll come to Bible school.
What are the easiest ways to identify? Because you don't want to single out kids with allergies, but they know they have allergies. So what are some ways?
Look, I'm a mom with a kid with allergies. You identify them.
Okay.
You make them stand out. Because the last thing.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Different colored lanyard.
So the kids don't necessarily know why they have a green lanyard and everyone else has a blue one, but us
Yeah, ours are red.
workers know.
Yeah, I think the lanyard is the best thing to do because you can't always see a bracelet.
Yeah, because like we have it on the label for their names, but
Mhm.
it's like at a distance, you can't really tell.
And some people with digital check-in systems, if y'all use that for VBS, it'll print it and put something on that label too. So there's all kind of ways. Again, depends on your situation, but absolutely, I wouldn't worry about. As a parent, I want label that person. I would much rather them have a red lanyard on or something to make them stand out than somebody give them something they're allergic to. So, all right. Another thing is administering medication. I had a kid come to one of my events with a PEC line one time. It scared me to death. But, do we take in kids? Do we, are we prepared to keep them safe and secure? And again, if you have a nurse and that could be their thing to do at Vacation Bible School, so all the skint knees, the stubbed toes, the smashed fingers, my tummy hurt, that they could just take care of those people. Is a really great thing if you have a nurse that would serve in those areas to take care of things like that. All right, security, the nitty gritties like pickup, drop off. How do we handle that? Let's just say we are gathering guests. VBS, the beauty in VBS is everybody recognizes it across the generations. So it does bring in guests to our church, which is what we want, right? But for a guest to come in and say, oh yeah, your kid's in B382, and them have to go try to find that room, is very difficult. So you want to make sure that you've got things well labeled, or maybe even think through a central drop-off and pickup point. So let me tell you about a big fail that I had. One year we were doing it wasn't VBS, it was a day camp. And I had a parent call me and she said, "Can I be honest with you?" And I said, "Well, I would like for you to be." Don't tell me a story. But she called and she said, "I think everything they were doing outside with the kids was great." She said, "But I feel like I just dropped my kid off at the county fair and nobody knows he's there." And I thought, oh, ouch, that hurt a little bit. But it really made me think, how just because we know everybody that's there and we know what everybody's role is at Vacation Bible School, how are we setting it up for the parents coming in who don't know us, but they're about to leave their kid? Every parent wants to know that their child was just left in good hands and that they were just taken care of and taken in. So we've got to make sure that at that drop off and that pickup point that we are looking parents eye to eye and, "Hey, I'm Krista Staten. I'm so glad that y'all are here. And what's your name?" "Okay, and what's your name?" "Oh, please come right over here and we'll get registration information." Or, "Oh, he's already registered. So great. So let me take you right in here to where Joe is, and Joe's going to be your teacher." So there is a contact from A to B of transfer. And then you got pickup. Where do you do that? We don't want to send parents to unknown locations all over the building, wandering around, because that also opens us up to random people coming in our church and wandering around. So, and how are we going to know that the right parent's even picking up the kid? You hear stories after stories where mom and dad separated. Mom is at VBS helping. This is a real life situation. Mom was at VBS volunteering and had dropped off their kids. Dad, who everybody knew in the church, came to pick them up. And they let him because he was dad, And dad got the kids and skipped town. And they were separated and nobody knew. So if we had the cards, you say, "Well, Krista, we don't have a check-in, check-out. We don't have one of those fancy digital systems. We can't do that for VBS." You can write it on a card. You can print a card. You can have a card with your church logo or with, somehow craftily designed so it cannot be reproduced, and have it attached as a pickup card. And you either have to have the card or a picture of the card. That's always what we said. You can have a picture of the card and come pick up. But they have to have something. Do parents get mad, especially your church people, when they don't have the card? They do. They do. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, they're going to get mad. But if you've got good registration information and you already know who can pick them up, you've already got these people are allowed to pick up my kids, and you can get an identification, a driver's license or something, and know that that person is who they say they are, and you can compare it to your registration information. That's the only way I would let people go. The same people that are going to get mad at you for taking care of their kids are going to be the first person to sue you because the wrong person got their kids. So I'm giving you permission to make them mad. So just make sure that, if you're putting things in place, that you're following your own rules. And that you're doing it. Because another thing is, what if all your church people come up and they never present a card to pick up their kid, and you're just like, "Oh, come on. Well, here I am, a guest at your church for the first time, and I get up there, and the three people in front of me never had to present their card, and then I get there, and do you have your card?" Do I look suspicious? And then I'm like trying to find my card. So you want to make sure that even your church people, and that could be something you could educate your church people going, "Look, we're passing out these cards and you have to show your card. And this is why we're going to have guests, and we don't want to treat them differently. We want they're going to have to show their card. We need you to show your card so it's consistent and that we're following our own rules." So just making sure you have something. Something we would do so we weren't sending people all over the building is we brought them back down to the worship rally room, and we clearly marked areas. So we even had rows in our church that we slammed all the way up against the wall so you could only exit through one side, so that it created boundaries. And then we had the signs on the wall, like this is first grade A, this is first grade B, second grade A, second grade B. However, or I even thought, this is complicated. Parents aren't going to remember if they're A or B. So I would just put first grade, second grade, and then they could go up to those teachers and they check them out from them. And then they were able to go out. And that way the parents felt comfortable. They knew where to go. They knew where to drop off. They knew where to pick up. And that was our drop off and our pickup. And they checked them in directly with their Bible study teacher. So being able to just think outside the box a little bit of how can we make this go better and more comfortable for a parent. Okay? All right, visitor policies. You know, what happens if people that are not signed up to volunteer and they're not there dropping off people? This always happens. We always have random people just show up. And a lot of times we have random people to show up just so they can eat the great VBS food that we're serving all of the wonderful volunteers. And so I finally would send people away. Because you know what? It finally hit me. I thought, it's not really a whole lot of help to me if people are going to show up the week of VBS, but they don't bother to let me know so that I can give them an assignment. And then I only planned to feed 50 teachers, and all of a sudden I got 65. That's a problem. Then my volunteers come through and there's not enough food. And so I started telling, we finally got a security team in place, and I said, look, if they do not have on a name tag, they need to leave. I need you to not let them in. I don't need them. And if it's a church person that's a very frequent person, then I need you to say to them, look, Krista would love to have you serve. Could you please, here's her cell number. Could you contact her tomorrow and let her know you're available to help? But it's closed for today. We don't have anywhere. And send them on. And then that person will learn, hey, we got to sign up. Because it's not a help to me when I'm trying to greet parents and when I'm out there trying to get things in place for random people to come up and go, oh, I'm here tonight. Do you need me anywhere? No, I don't. Because 3 weeks ago, I was stressing because I didn't have a volunteer, and I've been on the phone for 1,000,000 hours trying to get somebody, you know. So just, that's not the time to try to put those last minute people in place. So just don't let people just show up and put you in those positions. Just tell them, look, I'd love for you to help. Let me look at it tomorrow, and if you could serve tomorrow night, I'll put you in place. Okay? Or I say tomorrow night. Ours was at night. So whenever you have yours. All right. Just a few more things here. Communication. Now, how do you communicate between teachers? How do you communicate with the other VBS staff? Say there is an incident, there's a tornado warning, say there's an active shooter, say there's something where, oh my goodness, all of a sudden their rec teacher just got sick and they had to leave, and you've got to get all that, or somebody just threw up in the craft room and y'all need to have time to clean that up before you send another kid in there or another group of kids in there. It's just something, a way to communicate. Maybe it is through cell phone, you know, and you have your teachers maybe carry their cell phone so they can quickly communicate and get information out there. I know I hesitate to even say communicate through cell phone because that's a big no-no, is to have your cell phones out when you're working with kids. But sometimes it is the most practical way for us to contact people quickly. So you might just come up with some kind of system that you can use to be able to do that. All right. And then another thing is just empowering staff and teachers and you. I mean, it's got to be, if we're going to keep people safe and secure, everybody's got to be in on that. And so if you see something, you hear that all the time just out in our, if you see something, say something. If you hear something, tell it. You know, so if you see things that don't look right, if you hear things, don't just, you know what, that's not my job, I'm going to ignore that. It needs to be all of our business to keep people safe. If you see people not following the rules, then tell it. Somebody told me they had a policy that snitches get
Stitches.
no.
Oh, that's a good thing. That's the bad one. Yeah.
Snitches get riches. Thank you. Snitches get riches. And so they said that because they had a big food allergy thing, and so if one of their rules was no teacher could eat outside the teacher area for their food. And if a teacher was ever caught taking their food outside the teacher area, like back into their classrooms, she would keep gift cards in her pocket. And if somebody came and said, hey, I just need to let you know, Rachel just brought her food into the kids' classroom and is eating with all the kids, she'd get a gift card. So snitches get riches. And so that was something that in order to keep the rules and making sure people are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and you're the one who informs the director or informs the minister or informs whoever's in charge of making sure that the policies and procedures and safety and security measures are actually being followed by our own people, snitches get riches. There we go. Thank you for coming up with that rhyme, because I was just like, I got nothing. I thought you had a question. All right. So we want to make sure that in everything that we do, though, that we're keeping things just as safe and secure, and that we're creating this relationship with the parents in order for them to bring their kids back to us and trust us. Does anybody have any questions about safety and security before?
I had like a situation where like the parent did not want to leave like their kid there, they like just stayed there. Like, how would you go about that? I didn't really know how to do that.
Okay, so I had a church that had a situation one time where there was a lot of parents just hanging out, and it was for different reasons, like for traffic or the distance. And so the parents were just kind of congregating, and so they contacted one of their senior adult ladies classes and asked them if they would set up a coffee bar in one of the rooms. And so they set up this nice lounging area for parents, and then they just went in there, and they said it ended up being this just great thing. Like, it ended up being like a parenting discussion, and they gave them parenting tips and talked to them about what their kids were going to be learning during the week, and just really gave them a time to build relationship with parents. So if you got the extra space and got a couple of ladies that will go in there and just host that, I thought it was a fabulous idea. So good question on what to do with those parents. Yes?
Board games too, like a hospitality area for parents that are not coming.
Yeah.
They're not allowed to go back to the classroom. They have to stay right there.
Because if you let all these parents back into the classrooms, then you're letting a bunch of people in that you hadn't even background checked. You don't know who they are. So, and a lot of parents will understand that if you say, look, I can't let you back into the classroom because every volunteer here, we've already background checked and we've already trained them to be here for the week. And so it's our policy that we can't let people just come in. And as a parent, they will appreciate that. So, all right.
I helped out with a VBS. My church hosted a large conference that was taking place at an active hotel. It also had a bar.
Wait, what?
So,
I think I just gasped.
the VBS ended pretty late at night, which is also when all the other strangers up in the hotel would come down to the bars. So there'd be drunk people all around while the kids were going.
Ooh, were you involved in the first one like 100 years ago that started in a bar? No, okay. That is where the first VBS was. But, wow, that's interesting. That did kind of amp it up with some interesting security issues. Goodness. Well, y'all, let me pray for y'all real quick and I'll let y'all go. Father, I thank you so much for today. I thank you for every individual in this room. And Lord, I just pray that you put a hedge of protection over our churches. I pray that you would just protect us during the event of VBS. But Lord, not just then, anytime. I pray that you would help us to be busy about kingdom work, Lord, and just really protect us from these things. But help us to be wise. Help us to get the things in place that we need to have in place in order to protect the people that you have entrusted us with. And Lord, I just pray that you would be with these people now as they go, as they plan, as they prepare, and just help them, give them discernment. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.